Hi, thank you, Sadia. Welcome to today's Start in Your Yard series presentation, The Magic of Healthy Soil with Don Wilkin. This program is brought to you by Gail Borden Public Library and Northern King County Wild Ones. I'm Robin Magala. I'm the Elgin's Greeniac at large. I live a zero waste lifestyle, replete with a yard, sporting lots of natives and always looking for more. I back up to Hawthorne Hill Nature Center, which you can see behind me in its spring glory, pre-spring glory as we speak. I have to duck. There it is. Wild Ones is a national organization, not-for-profit advocacy group committed to promoting the use of native plants in landscaping, gardening, and restoration. The Northern King County chapter was founded in 2009. This Start in Your Yard program is built around Doug Tallamay's latest book, Nature's Best Hope. This book lays out a path for each of us to improve our neighborhoods by planting native plants in our yards. Dr. Tallamay is a professor of entomology at the University of Delaware and has written several books linking the health of humans on our planet to the health of pollinators and the native vegetation that supports them. His book provides information about how to use native plants in any type of yard and the benefits to ourselves and the neighborhoods in which we live. Please visit the startinyouryard.com website for more information, including a video presentation by Dr. Tallamay given last year. You can obtain a copy of the book at a discounted price at both Al's Cafe and Creamery and Arabica Cafe in downtown Elgin. Also, here you will find a link to Northern King County Wild Ones where you can find out more information about their programs and native plant sales. The Northern King County Wild Ones meets throughout the year here in Elgin. Programs are hosted monthly, the last Thursday of the month with various speakers. Tours of native gardens are also hosted. Here are a few upcoming meeting dates and topics. There's one coming up in a little over a week. Here are the dates for the upcoming plant sales where you can buy native plants and shrubs at a very reasonable price. If you have any questions, you can email startinyouryard@gmail.com for more information. If you stay for the entire presentation, you will receive a certificate by email that is redeemable at the Wild Ones native plant sale in May. This morning, I'm going to stop screen sharing. I'm going to stop screen sharing. Okay, this morning, it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Don Wilkin. Dr. Wilkin is Associate Professor Emeritus of Natural Resources and Evolutionary Human Ecology from the University of Arizona, Tucson. Dr. Wilkin studied the human species as he would any other animal species, with particular emphasis on what it would take to make us sustainable. Basically, he's an expert on the human carrying capacity of this big blue marble we call Earth. He is co-author of the book Sustainable Parenting, Unlocking Our Human Potential, Healing Our Plundered Planet, a contributing author at resilience.org, and has quite a few scholarly articles published. I found an interesting one published in 1996 in the International Journal Landscape and Urban Planning titled Accounting for Sustainability, Challenges to Landscape Professionals in an Increasingly Unsustainable World. Sounds like Don's been thinking about starting your yard for quite some time. Today, he'll be sharing with us the importance of healthy soil. By the time he's finished, he'll have you wondering whether we humans are as smart as dirt. There will be a time for questions and answers at the end of Don's presentation. Take it away, Don.
Thank you, Robin. Now, can you hear me? Am I coming through fine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to apologize ahead of time because my voice and my breathing sometimes are compromised. And when I first started doing research, I was doing research on soil erosion down in Champaign County. And this was in the late 1970s, just about the time that glyphosate or Roundup was starting to be used on a wholesale basis. And so I spent a couple of years basically up to my elbows in glyphosate. So not terribly surprising, 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and probably from that exposure that I had years ago. Anyway, it has affected my lungs and it has affected my breathing. So to some extent, so if I'm not coming through loud enough, let me know if there's any problems that way. My presentation will take about 45 minutes, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions. I've been asked to talk today about the magic of healthy soil. Forgive me if I repeat myself, but healthy soil has so much to teach us about life on this planet. Any discussion of soil health is bound to circle around to the same fundamental life principles again and again. Undisturbed healthy soils, and I should point out there's precious little undisturbed healthy soil left on this planet, is quite simply the most highly evolved, intricately self-organized ecosystem on Earth. The ideal model, if fully appreciated, for a healthier, more productive, more sustainable human ecosystem. The intelligence with which healthy soil mediates the production of photosynthetic energy, the foundation of all life on this planet, intelligence residing primarily in the genes of the soil microbial community, currently exceeds our human understanding. Soil microbiologists are only beginning to plumb the depths of soil microbial intelligence. Soil microbial intelligence, it turns out, is a highly sustainable intelligence. Human intelligence, it turns out, is not. Today's human represents the greatest threat to world's soil in its 500 million year existence. This past century, conventional farming, deforestation, climate change, and human population overshoot have destroyed about 2/3 of the healthy soil microbiome around the world. The rest is expected to be rendered economically unproductive in another 30 to 60 years. After that, 10 or 11 billion humans will need a new planet. Let me give you one example of the intelligence I'm referring to. This occurs when a healthy seed comes in contact with healthy soil. A healthy seed carries within it what is called a core microbiome, a collection of microbes it got from its parent plant and parent soil. These microbes, in addition to helping protect the ungerminated seed, are ready and waiting to work with the next common mycorrhizal soil network the seed comes in contact with. A common mycorrhizal soil network is a healthy soil's combined internet and Amazon Prime distribution system, connecting and coordinating the resources of a large volume of soil. The seed knows from its core microbiome which way is up to the light and down to water and nutrients, so it doesn't waste energy sending roots and shoots off in random directions. The core microbiome keeps the seed from germinating until the temperature has been high enough for a long enough time and enough moisture is available. When the seed puts out a root, the common mycorrhizal network in healthy soil, consisting of thousands of miles of fungal height, microscopic hollow tubes in each square yard of topsoil, connecting all the plant roots in the network, senses the new root's presence, seeks it out, and makes a permanent connection with it. In effect saying, welcome to the neighborhood. We've got everything you'll ever need. Water, minerals, and nutrients of every kind, growth hormones, energy from healthy plants of numerous species nearby, thousands of species of beneficial microbes, and signals from the network to let you know if there are any pests or diseases in the network, in which case we'll help you switch on the correct genes to protect yourself. We'll keep you supplied and informed from a volume of soil 10,000 times larger than your own roots can reach. Whatever you need, we'll make sure it'll be there from many meters away if necessary. All you have to do with the plant, as your leaves start photosynthesizing, weave about 40% of that photosynthate out of your roots into the common network to help keep us all fed and informed. Your photosynthate contains biochemical signals about everything important going on inside and around you. We'll make sure those signals are properly interpreted and that there's a timely and appropriate response if needed. Welcome aboard you green plant. You are the foundation of all life on this planet. We are here to help you fulfill your mission. Compare this to a seed from a depleted, conventionally cropped soil, whose core microbiome is all but missing. Such a seed may not know up from down, wet from dry, or cold from hot. It's not protected from frost or drought. When it does sprout a root, its signal is weak or defective, and the common mycorrhizal network often doesn't recognize it. It might just as well be another piece of rock or detritus needing to be decomposed. Whatever nutrients and water the seedling can access immediately adjacent to its own roots are all it's ever going to get from the soil. The same is true of a seed that has been drenched with nitrogen or phosphorus fertilizer or coated with an insecticide. Even if there is a functioning common mycorrhizal network in the soil, and there often isn't, it won't recognize a chemically treated seed. That seed is a foreign object. It's on its own. If the farmer doesn't feed it, spray it, and water it regularly like any house plant, it weakens and dies. Something I've been saying for years now bears repeating. Earth's civilized human carrying capacity, the second half of this century, in a post-carbon world in which we have run out of cheap oil, will depend entirely on how many acres of farmland we have regenerated to full microbial health the first half of this century. By year 2100, Earth's sustainable human population could be anything from a few hundred million barely civilized survivors eking out a meager subsistence from depleted soils if we continue pursuing conventional agriculture, to as many as 4 to 6 billion of us living a reasonably civilized life if we start universally applying what we are learning about soil health. The well-being of any civilization depends on an abundance of agricultural production. Frankly, I don't really want 6 billion neighbors, but civilization's future numbers and material quality of life will depend substantially on how we manage our soil this next 3 decades. If we do successfully regenerate the world's soils, it will open up a range of choices and opportunities for choosing what kind of civilization we want, and hopefully remind us of a lesson our petrochemical culture seems to have forgotten, that there is inevitably a trade-off between human numbers and material quality of life. Our choices must be conscious and rational, informed by an understanding of the evolutionary imperatives all ecosystems operate under. A basic understanding of evolutionary imperatives is key to making survivable choices. These imperatives boil down to the fact that all ecosystems impose physical limits, that those resources are best utilized by biologically diverse communities, fully communicating internally, equitably sharing common resources, and working mutually for the common good. The basic strategies of successful evolution that persist to this day were fully established 500 million years ago when soil first began to form on land. Evolution in soil is all about soil microbes acting in ways beneficial to plant communities to ensure a consistent supply of photosynthetic energy to themselves through plant root exudates. And what's good for soil microbes and photosynthesis turns out to be good for the entire global ecosystem, including humans. The awareness is gradually becoming clearer, especially for soil microbiologists, that we humans have an existential stake in the well-being of Earth's soil microbiome and its support of photosynthesis, the source of all life on Earth, which we happen now to be destroying faster than it can regenerate itself. Only about half the photosynthesizing leaf tissue is left today of what nature provided us a brief 10,000 years ago. Evolution is best described as change through time. Whether we're talking about animal, plant, or microbe, the genes controlling how they grow and what they do in their lives are reproduced anew with each new generation. And in bacteria, that's about once every 20 minutes. Because gene reproduction is occasionally inaccurate, genetic anomalies or mutations accumulate over time. While the overwhelming majority of these mutations are either neutral and have no effect, or harmful and are eliminated because they can't compete, the few that result in an ecological benefit, for example, more efficient capture of solar energy, or more efficient transfer of that energy to herbivores, those are likely to survive longer, which leads us to our most important evolutionary imperative. For 3.5 billion years, the most important contributor to evolutionary success, or ecological sustainability, is when a variety of different organisms, we call that biodiversity, living in communities and interacting together, we call it symbiosis, and slowly working out mutual benefits, we call that mutualism. They out-reproduce and outlast organisms and communities that don't work together as well or as fully. The more effectively such organisms work together, cooperatively or complementarily, the longer they and their communities are likely to last in evolutionary time. The longer they last, the more ways they discover to work together. It's a virtuous cycle, equitably sharing and supporting one another in diverse mutualistic communities is the first among many lessons from the evolution of soils we humans would do well to consider practicing more purposefully in our own communities. With luck and dedication, as Robin said, if we don't kill ourselves first, someday we humans could be as smart as dirt. Now I want to talk specifically about ecosystem health as a product of evolution. There are those who claim that evolution has no preferred direction, that mutations are random, and that life is as likely to devolve as to evolve. I counter with the remarkably complex workings of undisturbed healthy soil, the most ancient and venerable ecosystem on our planet, which has survived every challenge an unpredictable universe has thrown at it over hundreds of millions of years. Yet it survived and continued to grow in complexity. The progressive elaboration of mutually supported biological complexity in ecosystems is inevitable, in my understanding as a student of evolution. Evolution is constantly experimenting with ways to enhance the flow of solar energy through Earth's ecosystems, typically by elaborating the number of pathways through which that energy flows. The greater the energy flow through any ecosystem, the more structural and functional complexity it can sustain. The smaller steps, the more paths that energy can take, providing the ecosystem a more stable, more predictable, more resilient, and longer lasting existence. The fact that energy flow fosters complexity is true whether we're talking about the long-term flow of solar energy from photosynthesis or our brief but soon to be ending fling with petrochemical energy. The average American today has the equivalent of about 100 chemoelectromechanical energy slaves doing our bidding at the flip of a switch or the press of an accelerator. Every calorie of food on an American plate today is subsidized on average by a dozen calories of petrochemical energy. This recent economic complexity, now only about 200 years old in the modern human ecosystem, will not last beyond the middle of this century, when oil and gas become too expensive for most of their current uses, particularly for producing cheap food. The extent to which humanity's current huge numbers can be sustained depends entirely on how soon we get serious about regenerating our soils. The well-being of any civilization is a direct function of the productivity of its soils. Below ground, a high-functioning ecosystem evolves in the direction of all ecosystems, one of increasing symbiotic mutualism, organisms living together in ways that benefit one another, all ultimately in the service of photosynthetic energy. The largest number of mutualistic interactions on Earth are microbial, not surprising, since they had a 3.5 billion year head start on us, have an average generation time of 20 minutes against our 25 years. They outnumber a 6 sextillion to 1, that's a 6 with 20 zeros after, and can swap genes among themselves and with other species as casually as we swap conversation. Humans have a great deal to learn from soil microbes. It is their ancient and intricate mutualistic symbiotic interactions that are so amazing when we look closely at all they accomplish collaboratively, with no hands, fingers, eyes, ears, brains, tractors, or smartphones. Evolved mutualistic collaboration among diverse participants in stable communities is hands down the most important mechanism contributing to evolutionary success or longevity or sustainability. And this is just as true for advanced social species like humans as it is for soil organisms. Conflict and competition, on the other hand, disrupt both ecosystem stability and evolutionary longevity. Nature has evolved numerous strategies to keep conflict under control, the same basic strategies that work for controlling diseases, predation, and pest infestation. These mechanisms rely on symbiotic relationships evolved over millions of years. They make sure the good guys outnumber the bad guys, use most of the resources for themselves, and keep a number of predatory police organisms around to keep the bad guys under control. But photosynthesis is key. Anything that disrupts or inhibits the natural flow of photosynthetic energy through ecosystems is by definition unhealthy and detrimental to ecosystem productivity. Conventional farming today, characterized by gratuitous soil disturbance, chemical biocides, elimination of biodiversity, and months of bare soil fallow every year, is the most ecologically unhealthy enterprise in civilization's current repertoire. But this isn't new with modern society. Inept soil management has been involved in more failed civilizations in human history than have wars. Let me cite now a list of currently diminished human ecosystem functioning resulting from our current chronic soil mismanagement. More severe floods, deeper, longer lasting droughts, more destructive hurricanes and tornadoes, fewer wildlife and pollinators. Half the world's wildlife has been eliminated in the last 40 years in terms of numbers. And I recently heard that 75% of our insect population has been lost in the last 30 years. Western bumblebees have been reduced 93% in the last 20 years. But to continue on my list, less dependable rainfall and deteriorating climates, failing crops, depleted soils, less nutritious food, more hunger, and declining public health, leading to throngs of homeless refugees and civil unrest, as witnessed the Arab Spring 10 years ago. The abandoned, lifeless soils of Syria's once fertile crescent, the cradle of civilization, are said to be only 20 years ahead of California's Central Valley. San Francisco could easily become the next Damascus when the Central Valley starts to empty out. Since the start of the Green Revolution 50 years ago, 1/3 of the world's cropland has been abandoned as economically unproductive, in large part because of the Green Revolution. And the world is now losing farmland at the rate of 25 million acres every year, almost equal to the 27 million acres of farmland in Illinois each year. But to complete my list, in the not too distant future, as farm productivity falls, a failed global civilization is becoming a distinct possibility. The bare farm soil we see so regularly here in the Midwest, on which photosynthesis is entirely missing, is as unhealthy and counterproductive as land can possibly be. And human society inevitably reflects the health of the soils. When soil is not covered with green plants, it is dying. When soil is tilled or fertilized or sprayed, get rid of weeds and pests, it is being actively killed. Conventional agriculture, on balance, is progressively killing every acre it touches. We are in the middle of and responsible for Earth's 6th mass extinction, with extinction rates thousands of times faster than natural rates of extinction. Can humans avoid the same fate we are inflicting on the global ecosystems that spawned us as a species? What will it take to guarantee our survival? Continuous year-long photosynthesis from highly diverse plant communities is the be-all and end-all of global ecosystem health, and of human health as well. Weeds may be the bane of a conventional farmer's existence, but weeds are nature's early warning and first responders to ecosystems in which photosynthesis has been compromised. Weeds like cockleburrs, dandelions, and thistles should be appreciated, not eliminated. They are nature's way of restoring photosynthesis to damaged plant communities. Left to run their course in a diverse plant community, these unwelcome sentinels quickly give way to more desirable species. Weeds are simply doing their best to keep the world alive. As a survivor of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, I suggest we not glyphosate them. The ideal way to control weeds is to maintain a diverse, year-round, 100% ground cover of plants you prefer to suppress the plants you'd rather not see. Now specifically talking about healthy soil. A healthy soil is the essential underground infrastructure of a high-functioning ecosystem. In much the same sense, a major city is essential infrastructure for a high-functioning civilization. It is a repository of evolved intelligence that coordinates and catalyzes the ecosystem's work. The healthy soil, whose workers are the myriad microbes living within it, is constructed of weathered rock particles and organic materials glued into a stable, intricate, purposeful architecture of soil aggregates. These soil aggregates are suffused with life-giving humus, manufactured by soil microbes for plant food exudates. This intricate but sturdy soil infrastructure holds plants firmly upright so they can capture light, while insulating life below ground from extremes of heat or cold. Its detailed architecture allows for the abundant simultaneous storage, easy retrieval, and movement of water, air, nutrients, plant roots, pheromones or signaling molecules, heat, and all the various soil organisms that distribute photosynthetic energy flow throughout the system. Healthy soil, functioning as it should, as it evolved to function before humans started messing with it, needs no synthetic irrigation, fertilization, tillage, weed, pest, or disease control. It can already do all of that on its own without our help. The intelligence in the soil microbial community is amazing. Sensing what is occurring all around it, turning genes on and off, both its own and others, it coordinates and directs the complex sequence of interactions, both above and below ground, that guarantee maximum ecosystem productivity, despite a highly variable environment. Rather than eliminating weeds, because we once thought they took water and nutrients away from real crops, we should be encouraging carpets of functionally diverse plant species to outcompete the weeds and to serve as companion crops into which we plant our cash crops, trusting a healthy soil ecosystem to nurture both of them simultaneously. A major focus of agricultural mechanical research in the organic and regenerative community should be how most efficiently to grow and harvest cash crops in the presence of full cover companion crops. The workings of microbial evolution constitute the closest thing to real magic in the ecological world. One supposedly simple common human gut microbe, Bacteroides theta iota omicron, or you should see how that looks written out, for example, can produce 260 different enzymes for breaking down complex carbohydrates. Each higher order organism, an individual person like you, for example, is in essence a large, complex, highly coordinated community of microorganisms. In Earth's evolutionary progression, before individual microbes combined to form multicellular organisms, they were already highly evolved through billions of years of trial and error. Each bacterium had a cell wall with a selectively permeable membrane that was exquisitely responsive to the myriad substances floating around in its growth medium, able to sense chemicals as dilute as a few parts in a trillion. This allowed it to actively usher inside its cell body those things that could be used as food or building materials. It sensed and resisted the entry of harmful materials. The membrane actively expelled wastes and poisons, while it kept inside what should be kept and protected. It signaled its presence biochemically to other microbes and sensed the presence of other microbes, including other species, knowing when there were enough signals of the right kind to switch on or off their own genes or someone else's genes for a coordinated response. One of the earliest evolved capabilities of microbes when they first started invading other cells and one another was to manipulate the host genome for the invading microbe's advantage. Viruses, about which we know next to nothing, do the same thing in even greater numbers. Fortunately, the majority of successful invaders that have survived actually confer an advantage or provide a benefit. Some have even become essential or obligate. Antibiotics, unfortunately, kill them all, good and bad. Nature's preferred immune strategy is to keep enough good guys around to monopolize the resources and hold the bad guys down. When that doesn't work, there are usually a small number of predatory organisms available to neutralize the troublemakers. It is becoming increasingly clear that the first line of defense against ill health, or guarantor of good health in humans, is a healthy, nutrient-dense diet, giving the advantage to your good microbes. And nutrient-dense food can only come from microbially healthy soil. So-called simple bacteria evolved so many remarkable capabilities. At least 5 of these microbial specialists, the oxidizers, the fermenters, those able to move about on their own, the photosynthesizers, and the nitrogen fixers, subsequently managed to ingest one another in various combinations without digesting them or compromising their function, eventually forming symbiotic multicellular collaborations that were able to reproduce and survive as individual whole complex organisms through time. You are the result of one such very complex microbial collaboration. Like every plant and animal in the world, you are embedded in a world of microbes. You are constructed of and coated with microbes. Microbes are embedded in you. Some of those microbes are able to switch your genes on and off to maintain your physical and mental health, just as they switch their own genes on and off to accomplish their own specialized functions and to aid in their own survival. You are an intricately coordinated community of microbes, each of them doing individually pretty much what microbes have always done for billions of years, but collectively they add up to musician, artist, farmer, or student your microbes like you think of as you. Now, a few words about diversity, biodiversity. Evolution isn't mysterious or magic. Things that work well tend to last. The better they work, the longer they last, the more important a part of the ecosystem they become. Things that don't work as well are crowded out of existence by things that work better. Biodiversity is one of the things that confers more benefits than almost anything else in nature. Biodiversity represents a pool of options from which nature can select as needed when conditions change. It's a guarantee of survival. Eastern Australia is an area consisting of mile after mile of monocultured wheat. It is also an area of sparse and unpredictable rainfall. Some years they get a wheat crop and some years they don't. In recent years, when the wheat crop fails, verdant green stripes of healthy wheat, 8 or 10 feet wide, can be seen in a grid pattern across the otherwise brown landscape. These are former fence lines that were removed and converted to wheat crop in recent years as the farms consolidated and the farming equipment became larger and more automated. For decades before the fences were removed, those fence line strips were not tilled, planted, or sprayed, unlike the crop areas. Whatever random wheat seeds and assorted species of weeds found their way there, grew year-round, undisturbed, year after year. Their root exudates from these diverse photosynthesizing weeds built up a healthy soil underneath, creating strips of a highly diverse soil microbiome. The nutrient status and moisture holding capacity of these fence line strips was significantly higher than the rest of the field. In dry years now, these fence line strips don't experience the same drought as the rest of the field. Their soil moisture and temperature are perfectly fine, thank you. But this advantage will only last for a few more years. The green stripes are doomed to fade, victims of conventional farming practices. There are countless examples around the world now of people experimenting with cover crops, where they plant 1 or 2, occasionally 3 species together, and they too often either fail outright or at least disappoint. But where 8, 10, or 20 species of the appropriate species diversity are grown together, they produce abundant, lush growth from exactly the same climatic inputs. What we are learning is that at some level of diversity in the plant community, the microbes reach a quorum and genes are switched on to activate the underground mycorrhizal network in ways that make everything in the network grow profusely. We know some of those bacteria produce plant growth hormones when they're switched on. to coordinate the complex underground microbial symphony of a healthy soil. A plant community's roots are all interconnected by an internet of mycorrhizal fungal hyphae. You've heard me refer to as the common mycorrhizal network. A network consisting of tens of thousands of miles of microscopic hollow tubes in each cubic meter of soil. Mysteriously capable of moving things in two directions simultaneously in the same tube, if that is called for. This network is able to transport water and nutrients and signaling molecules from remote locations throughout the soil to wherever they are needed to support photosynthesis. Research makes abundantly clear now that even with identical amounts of leaf tissue present on the surface, the more plant species diversity is present, interconnected by a common mycorrhizal network, the more plant biomass is produced per acre. The more nutritionally dense with vitamins, minerals, and micronutrients that biomass is, the more organic carbon it builds into the soil, and the more resistant the community is to pests, diseases, drought, and freezing, the very essence of ecosystem health. For every harmful species of bacterium, insect, or fungus, there are hundreds or thousands of beneficial species ready to take resources away from the bad guys. Destroying the soil's common mycorrhizal network, which unfortunately always kills more good microbes than bad microbes, is the principal reason conventional tillage, biocides, bare fallow, and set stock grazing are so destructive of agricultural soils, grow so many weeds, and foster so many diseases and pests. Here I would interject that nature never farms without animals, and humans shouldn't either. Whether you eat them or keep them as pets is your choice, but you absolutely need them to grow the healthiest soil and plant communities. Grasses and prairie plants co-evolved for the last 55 million years with grazing animals. Grazing stimulates photosynthesis and plant growth as an adaptive response to tissue tearing and trampling, as well as to the saliva, gum, and urine that is deposited. For thousands of years, farming experts have praised the virtues of manure for maintaining soil health. Adding cover crops and grazing animals to conventional cropping systems results in increased crop yields, plus meat, wool, egg, and dairy production from the livestock, all at little or no extra cost for irrigation, synthetic fertilizer, or chemical biocides. Adding managed grazing can as much as double the rate of carbon accumulation and humus production in soil as compared to regenerative practices without livestock. How healthy a soil is can be easily and inexpensively measured. The most direct measure of soil health is soil organic matter testing, using loss on ignition analysis, which tells you what percentage of the soil's weight is organic matter. In simple terms, a certified lab incinerates a dried soil sample in a very hot oven until it stops losing weight, and then they calculate what percent weight it loses. For any soil type in the American Midwest, the more soil organic matter, the healthier the soil, the more nutrient dense its produce, the more ecosystem services it is providing, and I would add the more farmers should be paid for growing it. A healthy soil is a public utility of overwhelming value to society. Soil organic matter is unquestionably the world's most valuable crop. Those who grow and steward it should be properly compensated. Conventional farmers, I stress, do not grow carbon into their soils. They deplete it. It is interesting to note that no matter the crop feeding it, soil organic matter has the same chemical structure and composition and provides the same ecosystem services everywhere in the world. The techniques to grow it and test it, just like the practices that destroy it, are also the same everywhere in the world. Soil organic matter testing should become a worldwide standard for all ranchers, farmers, gardeners, and landscapers. It is said that you can't manage what you don't measure it. Universal soil organic matter testing could revolutionize agriculture. The best indirect measure of soil health is BRICS, B-R-I-X testing, which tells you both how rapidly a plant was photosynthesizing before it was harvested, and how abundantly a soil microbiome was providing it nutrients. A Brix test measures the concentration of dissolved sugars, minerals, and micronutrients in plant, fruit, or vegetable sap. I often Brix the vegetables and fruits I buy. Farmers market food is definitely the most nutrient dense. If every rancher, farmer, gardener, and landscaper in the world adopted these two simple tests, soil organic matter on an annual basis at the end of the growing season, and a Brix measure of the produce, and if consumers insisted on seeing these metrics wherever farm products are sold, human health would take a quantum leap forward in a very short time. There is no good reason to test for conventional soil fertility, nitrogen, phosphorus, fertilizer, and potassium in a healthy soil. A diverse community of soil microbes will provide all the fertility we need. Soil fertility and health will be faithfully indicated by the two tests I recommend, soil organic matter and Brix. Finally, I want to talk about the magic involved in post-carbon agroecosystems. Anticipating the world's looming shortage of affordable oil and natural gas in the next few decades, and I should say that it isn't that we're going to run out of oil, we're going to run out of affordable oil that we can afford to recover. Given their centrality to conventional food production today, by the second half of this century, we are going to have to learn all over again how to survive on an all-natural local agriculture, which means natural rainfall without artificial irrigation, natural fertility without synthetic fertilization, and natural tillage by indigenous soil fauna, particularly earthworms and beetles. As luck would have it, climate change is also mitigated by these very same farming practices. As quickly as possible, we need to permanently, year-round, regreen all the world's farmland. But we can't do that effectively until we restore dependable regional rainfall, about half of which we have eliminated by deforestation and inappropriate farming practices. That can only be accomplished by rebuilding the soil carbon sponge, meaning its soil organic matter, which is now about 2/3 depleted, by restoring the world's forests, which are similarly depleted, restoring its wooded field borders and woodlots, about 90% depleted, and by restoring and diversifying our soil microbial community. Doing so will restore evapotranspiration, which is the water vaporized into the atmosphere through the leaves of actively photosynthesizing plants. Evapotranspiration, feeding regional precipitation, and replenishing a restored soil carbon sponge is not only the ideal irrigation system, it is Earth's most effective evaporative cooling system, able to cool a planet much more quickly than reducing carbon dioxide emissions. Here I need to explain further. Water that is evaporated from the soil surface but not transpired through a plant goes into the atmosphere as haze, just water vapor and a load of heat, and there it stays. Hazes are nature's most oppressive greenhouse gases for trapping heat. Water vapor controls 90 to 95% of atmospheric dynamics, while carbon dioxide controls only 10 or 11%. But water transpired by healthy plants, trees in particular, deliver a third substance to the atmosphere of great importance to the hydrologic cycle. In addition to water vapor and heat, a bacterium growing abundantly on leaf surfaces, Pseudomonas syringae, is transpired into the air along with the transpired moisture and heat. This symbiotic bacterium serves as a condensation nucleus in the upper atmosphere, uniquely capable of causing millions of haze droplets to coalesce or condense into water droplets large enough to form clouds, and eventually large enough to fall as rain or snow. You'll be hearing more about bioprecipitation in the future. The coalescence of haze water particles into larger droplets releases their heat back to space, leaving highly cooled water droplets that eventually grow large enough to fall back to Earth. Forests and woodlands, both because they have a higher leaf area index than grasslands, and because of their greater concentration of Pseudomonas bacteria, are about twice as effective at producing evapotranspiration and rain or snow as are grasslands. this is all dependent on their getting moisture from a fully regenerated soil carbon sponge. Grasslands, of course, don't need as much rain as woodlands, or they wouldn't remain grasslands, but they could certainly use more dependable rain than they're getting now. To most quickly cool the planet and avoid runaway climate change, we should be planting trees and regenerating the soil carbon sponge in our farm and ranch soils with singular urgency. In the post-carbon era, assuming we regenerate our soils, food will again become both more nutritious and tastier. The United States has long spent about twice as much per person on healthcare as the average OECD nation. Yet we have the worst health statistics of them all. This is because of the standard American diet, or SAD. To get the same minerals, vitamins, and micronutrients today from our food as we got in 1940, we would have to eat twice as much meat, 3 times as much fruit, and 4 to 5 times as many vegetables. Taste, of course, declines with mineral and micronutrient depletion. It will be refreshing to reacquaint ourselves with the taste of nutrient-dense foods again. Many are for the first time. Only healthy soil can bring out the remarkable differences in taste between heritage species bred for taste and garden variety species bred for reasons other than taste, such as growing season, plant height, uniformity, water efficiency, pest resistance, stem thickness, and so on. Grown in depleted soils, even heritage species taste like cardboard. It will be especially beneficial health-wise to be rid of the toxic chemical, hormonal, and antibiotic condiments now seasoning our conventionally grown food. For my final thought, prior to World War II, farm families were able to keep nearly 3/4 of their gross farm income after expenses, and rural communities were thriving. Input suppliers and service providers at the time got about 1/4 of gross farm income. Everyone prospered equitably. In the last 2 decades, corporate chemical suppliers and farm service providers have taken 98% of gross farm income, and in some years, more than 100%, for products guaranteed to both progressively kill soil and burden farmers with unsupportable debt. This is called moron agriculture, referring to the process of putting more chemicals on to make things better. Better for whom is regrettably clear, and it's not the farmers. Bankruptcies and suicides are at all-time highs in the U.S. farm community today. Absentee landlords knowing nothing about farming are becoming the norm and turning their thumbs down on investing in soil health. Non-owner tenant farmers, whose leases may or may not be renewed from year to year, have little incentive to invest in land improvements. Our rural communities, and now sadly our farmers, are dying right along with their soils. That will change only when farm families own their own land again, giving them a compelling incentive to improve farm profits and practices. This has been shown repeatedly throughout the history of world land ownership. The progressive impoverishment of farmers and their loss of land ownership is an inevitable part of the arc of history for urbanized, feudalistic, or capitalist societies that don't appreciate or understand the myriad benefits responsible farmers can actually provide. If I were king, all farmland would be confiscated and redistributed to the families farming it under the condition they agree to adopt regenerative farming practices. We would pay them to transition from high input moron agriculture to a more natural ecological way of farming. We would pay them for every ton of carbon they sequester. Nature spent 3.5 billion years evolving the most productive soil ecosystem ever to exist, one requiring no help from humans. Today's farmers need to learn to work with nature, not against it. Corporate chemical agriculture, and I would add most agricultural extension agronomists, have taken us in exactly the wrong direction this past 75 years. This intentionally unnatural direction has devastated the world's soils, not to mention human health, and turned its produce into cardboard. The closer we can reproduce what nature is, the closer we will get to the Holy Trinity, that evolution provided us of microbially healthy soils, delicious nutrient-dense foods, and microbially healthy animals and people. The soil microbial community will do all this for us at very little cost if we just feed it a year-round, highly diverse, organic plant diet. Restore the trees and woodlots. And we're going to need lots and lots of woodlots for home heating and cooking when affordable oil and all the wooden porch railings and wooden house trim are burned up. Bring back grazing animals to our farms and plant in our fields, our flower beds, our orchards, our former suburban lawns, and our flower plots. Lots of compost, vegetables, herbs, fruits, grains, nuts, flowers, cows, chickens, pigs, sheep, and goats for our own consumption. Then stand aside and let the soil do what it already knew how to do successfully for millions of years before profit-seeking humans came up with a better idea. And that ends my remarks. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Don, hi, it's Jean Muntz. I'm wondering, I know you just laid out some wishes about where we could go to get back to a system that regenerates the soil, but I'm sure you're in touch with farmers and those who are working the land right now. Where do we start? Is it at the federal level with new ways of looking at subsidizing, or where would you think we need to start with changing the farming practices?
Well, we're starting to make progress at the federal level, believe it or not. I am a member of Citizens Climate Lobby.
Oh yeah.
And it is the largest grassroots climate lobby in the world, I believe. But in any case, we have chapters in every congressional district in the United States. And they're starting to make, we've been hammering them for a long time. About 5 years ago or so, a group of us got together and said, you know, the farmers don't have any incentive to start making this transition that is so seriously needed. But the farmers have no incentive. There's no benefit to them. In fact, as tough as things are financially for farmers, they just about are absolutely disinclined to strike off in a different direction. So there's going to have to be some funding. Well, Citizens Climate Lobby has been arguing for a long time for a tax on carbon. And they for reasons to make it politically palatable, they're saying they want to return all of that carbon tax to the American taxpayers. My feeling is that all they're doing is keeping our energy consumption high by returning that. I would much rather see that go to farmers for sequestering carbon into their soil. The program I laid out here of regreening the world's farmland is actually Australia's idea. Australia has decided that, and I believe that they're correct, that what we really need to do, we certainly carbon dioxide is important and we need to pay attention to it. But what we really need to do is to regreen our farmland. And farmers can't do that on their own. So what we need to do is start funding farmers, paying farmers, as if it were a public utility, to start regreening their farmland year round. So yes, I'm now. Some people say, yeah, there's a private market out there. There is a carbon offset market that is slowly growing, but it really doesn't. It really isn't attracting the numbers of farmers that we really need to have attracted to make the change in a reasonable time. So yes, I'm all for Citizens Climate Lobby's carbon fee without the dividend. there's also something, Sherry Bustos, who is the congressional representative from Northwestern Illinois, someplace or other, has introduced an initiative called the Rural Green Partnership. And the Rural Green Partnership, if you read it carefully, is an ideal vehicle for initiating some of these. If we got a carbon tax and we decided to pay farmers, then Sherry Bustos' Rural Green Partnership would be the perfect vehicle to get that going. So, you know, bottom line, call your congressperson, tell them you support a carbon tax and that you support Sherry Bustos' Rural Green Partnership.
Thank you. I know there's members in the audience. There's other CCL members hearing this today. So I'm interested in your angle on that. If there's not another question, I do have one. Most of us are attending these presentations because we're gardeners and because we're recognizing the importance of native plants and what the native plants do to build the soil, restore water tables, etc. So how do we transfer your advice about regenerating the soil, needing animals as well? Is it enough that we're just realizing that we share our property with other beings that will be here? Are they going to be doing enough to help us regenerate our soil?
Well, I thought a lot about that, and I'm going to be doing it. I live in Sun City, and of course we can't do anything with these postage stamp lots. But I did lease a small garden plot out on the edges of the community here. I am going to grow a chaos garden this year. And a chaos garden, basically I'm going to have, I think it's 20 or 25 species of heritage vegetable seeds and a dozen or 15 species of native flowers. And I'm just going to throw that all out on the ground and let it go. And we'll see what happens. You know, if I can keep my neighbors from yelling at me.
Yeah.
As far as the animals go, it's out there sort of on the edge of things near some woods. So I'm hoping that the animals will, the raccoons and the chipmunks and the whatever else can get in there. And I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, I'm going to do it if they let me do it, I'm going to do it for about 3 or 4 years. And of course, I'm doing all the bricks testing and all the soil organic matter testing before and throughout the process, and we'll see what actually happens.
Great.
But that should be fun. I'm looking forward to that.
So we have a couple of comments in the question and answers here. So this person said they disagree with the lack of incentive. There are so many farms that have made a choice and had great success with organic farming, farm-to-table community, or farm-to-table community-supported agriculture and farm tours. And they added that farms have become large and dependent on chemicals, partly due to the need to feed the world. Thus, an economy of scale is needed. That said, better practices are needed. So not really a question, but a couple of comments there.
And everything they say is exactly true. There are lots and lots and lots of people trying different things to cause this transition to occur. My point is that it isn't happening fast enough. There isn't enough of an incentive to get it done in the time that it needs to be done in. So they're absolutely right. These things are happening, and I talk with people like that all day, every day, and it's encouraging and fun to hear what new things they're discovering and the truth is that in 50 years, I firmly believe that all of our food networks will be local food networks. It's all going to be food co-ops and local growers feeding local markets. The global market is not going to be a significant part. None of you will remember this, but before World War II, the global market was basically bananas and papayas. There wasn't much else to it. And we're going to go back to that. That's where I see us heading. So it's all going to be local. I think it's all going to be organic, absolutely. And I don't know. Anyway, those points are all well taken.
So I don't see any other questions in the chat. Does anybody have anything else they want to ask?
I would be delighted to give you my email address. And if anybody has thoughts or comments, questions, I'm comfortable with them contacting me directly if they want to do that. Can I do that? Is that legal?
I think so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead and share that, Don.
Okay. My email address is Wilkin, WILKIN, at Olympus, OLYMPUS.net. Wilkin at Olympus.net. And I'd be happy to respond to emails.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Don. And let's see, are there any other questions coming in? No, I don't see any. So again, thank you for that presentation, Don. And I'd also like to thank Gail Borden Public Library and Northern King County Wild Ones for hosting these great presentations to get us all back to the land and maybe getting us a
comment.
Huh?
Arnie had a comment.
Ah, okay. Let's see
Yes,
what
Sue's comment said that she doesn't agree that regenerative farmers produce less. And I hope I didn't say that, because it's pretty clear that yes, you're going to take a hit the first couple of years in the transition. Your productivity, your yield is not going to be what it was beforehand. And there are people arguing whether you should go cold turkey and not do any fertilizers, or whether you should use fertilizers in the transition. But those people who are doing regenerative the way it should be done, they're doing all the good stuff, cover crops, no-till, and animals, are actually getting better yields than they had before they made the transition. So it can be done.
Okay, there's a couple of other chats here. My grandparents had 14 acres. They grew a large garden, kept cows, chickens, and bees. It provided some food, manure, natural insect control, and one fed another, a perfect circle of sustainability. And then again, another comment, Gabby Brown has a better bottom line and equal yields after several years. So there's an example.
Yeah, Gabe Brown is my my hero, and basically yes, he was the one. He started off with cover crops and no-till for a lot of years before he started doing livestock, and he just wasn't. I mean, he was doing better, and of course he was saving money on expenses, but he wasn't doing fantastic. And then, by golly, when he started doing livestock, incorporating livestock, suddenly it made all the difference in the world. So yes, Gabe Brown's yields are higher than all his neighbors, generally speaking. And he's saving so much money because he's not putting on all those inputs, not all that moron agriculture. And so the bottom line is, his bottom line is a whole lot better than most of his neighbors.
We just got a question that, is it possible to get a copy of this talk?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so should they
Email
email?
me and I'll send it off.
Okay, Jane, did you get Don's email? Can you send a yes or a no in the Q&A or the chat? Also, this talk will be posted on Gail Borden Public Library's YouTube channel. It should be up within a couple of weeks, I think. Each of the Start in Your Yard talks have been posted there, so you can take advantage of seeing more of them.
And I believe that Sadia said she could send out a link immediately to where it lives in the meantime on Zoom. So because we had difficulties at the beginning, we'll get you the link so you can hear the beginning. There are some absolutely incredible ideas there at the beginning. I was hurting that you were missing them.
Yes, Nancy, I will send all the registrants that link and we'll have it there for about a week. And then I'm going to want to transfer it over to YouTube for others to watch.
Perfect.
Okay, I think that's all we've got. Yes?
Robin, there's someone raising their hand. Jane, I can
Oh,
allow them
okay,
to
let me.
talk. Jane Falsler, if you want to ask a question,
No, I just, I got the email and I will email to get a copy of the talk. I thought it was wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, everyone, and we apologize for the technical difficulties we had. I did, like I said, we'll send the link right away for people to watch that missed the beginning, and then we will eventually get it on our YouTube channel. And thank you, Dr. Don Wilkin and all the Wild Ones panelists. This is great. Appreciate everyone who attended and everyone who did the presentation.
Yes, and don't forget, you can get a copy of Doug Talamay's Nature's Best Hope at a discount at either Al's Cafe and Creamery or Arabica Cafe in downtown Elgin.
All right, everyone, have a wonderful day.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.